All right, I see some more people jump on, so I think we are all set to get started. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Andrea, Copia's head of marketing, who'll sort of be our MC for today.
All right. Thanks, Joe. Hi, everyone. Thanks for attending today. So, just a couple of things. First and foremost, introductions. Yes, I am Andrea. I am head of marketing here at Copia. I will be our MC and also a panelist. If I continue through the line of folks and our exciting lineup for today, also joining is first Matthew Lee. So, he is our VP of Business Development and a co-founder here at Copia. Do you want to say hi, Matt?
Hey, Andrea, excited to be here. Thanks for putting this together.
All right, fantastic. And the star of today. So joining us is Toby Varland, Copia Customer VP of Technology at Varland Plating. Toby, I'll hand it off to you to make an introduction as well.
Uh, Hello, thank you everybody for being here. I wouldn't necessarily call myself a star today, but I'm happy to be here and share anything that I can that may be helpful. So, again, as Matthew said, I appreciate you guys putting this together, and looking forward to seeing what comes of it.
Great. Okay. Before we jump into today, just a couple of things at the top of the hour. So first and foremost, you see the three of us here. We are a panel. That means that we're looking for an organic discussion today. So that's all to say. It'll be myself, Toby, and Matt talking about Toby's experience with Copia. So that also means it's a really good opportunity to hear firsthand from a Copia user and also someone in the industry and how they're using Copia and their experience with it. Which leads me to my next point, which is please ask all the questions. You can put them into the chat bot that you will see at the bottom of your screen, and you can put them there at any time, and we will get to them as the discussion flows and time allows. So, without further ado, Toby, I'm going to hand it off to you again. I know that you introduced yourself, but please tell us a little bit more about Varlin Plating.
Okay, so as you may have guessed, based on my name, Varlin Plating is a family company for me. It was founded in 1946 in Cincinnati, Ohio, by my great uncle. So my branch of the family has worked here. My grandfather worked here. My father works here. I've worked here ever since high school. But we are a job shop electroplating company in Cincinnati, Ohio. So if you're not familiar with electroplating is a process of um, putting at least as far as we do it, it's putting a metal coating over other smaller metal parts. And that metal coating, for example, we will take screws made out of steel and put a zinc coating on them for corrosion resistance. So there's a lot of different reasons why you do electroplating. Some of it is for performance, some of it is for to make things look better. Uh, we do about 9 different types of electroplating here with lots of variations of those things. And again, we're a job shop, so we don't manufacture anything. We accept orders coming in from companies all over the country. They ship them in, we plate them in a couple of days and ship them back. Um, as a job shop, we have a lot of challenges because we will plate things that are everything we do is smaller parts in bulk. And they all go into a barrel and they go through a series of chemical dips and a whole lot of other stuff in the process. But we do parts that range from the size of like screws that you would find in eyeglasses, where it's hundreds or thousands of pieces per pound, up to pieces that are a couple pounds and rods that are 12 to 18 inches long. So we're a relatively small company. We've got about 50 employees with just one physical location. But that variety of parts that we do demands a lot of flexibility when it comes to our industrial automation. So we do a lot of that in house, and that's where over the last year or so we've really been using and leveraging Copia to try to take that automation game to the next level. So that's a bit about the company. In terms of me personally, I went to college for information systems, so kind of a technology related degree, but out of a business college. Um, Again, I worked here after high school, all through college, part time. I've been here full time for 20 years since graduating college. Have worked in all aspects of technology here. And while I know at a lot of places they kind of separate, IT and OT at Varland with just 50 employees. I kind of do it all. I've got a small team working for me, but we all kind of do a little bit of everything here. So it's fun for me because no 2 days are the same, but it's also a challenge because it requires both a breadth and a depth of knowledge that can be tricky. But that's kind of my background here. Again, I've been here for a long time, and I've been working on some of these systems for a long time. And I've had several people kind of come in and come and go. And as we'll hear as we get into this conversation, there are obviously challenges with turnover and challenges in terms of trying to maintain quality from a code and from an automation perspective throughout those over time and throughout those transitions. So I think that's a bit about the company and my background. So again, at any point, I'm pretty much an open book. So if anybody has questions for me during the webinar or after, feel free to ask. Feel free to reach out on LinkedIn or any other way, and I'm happy to chat.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Toby. Thank you for the intro. Thank you for more background on your role in Varland. And so this actually makes it a perfect candidate for the first question, really. Tell us a little bit more just about the evolution of technology at Varland. I know that you've been there for a long time. You're in information systems. How have you used it as a competitive advantage? Let's start there.
Okay, so the electroplating industry traditionally, it's a mechanical chemical process. It's an industrial process. It's dirty. We're working around a lot of harsh chemicals. So it is, most plating shops are really dirty. And the people at Varland decades ago kind of realized that there's an opportunity to be a little bit more of a high-end shop, a little bit more of a specialty shop where we took on difficult work that a lot of other people couldn't do. So some of the ways that we accomplished that were, 40 years ago in the early 80s, our company invested in an IBM AS400 or some predecessor thereof, server, and we developed essentially a COBOL-based, wasn't called that then, but I guess the modern term would be kind of our ERP suite of applications that we use to manage our business. So our customer database, part database, work instructions, inventory, accounting, payroll, all of that stuff. We had this whole suite of applications developed internally, which allowed us to have consistent work instructions, have a database of parts, and have notes and all that sort of history, billing, and it allowed us to automate a lot of the aspects of running our business at a time that not many platers were very automated in that arena. So that really helped us grow. And then several years after that, in the late 80s, early 90s, we really began pushing to automate our plant floor and our processes as much as we could. So we've almost always worked with Opto 22 hardware, Opto 22 software, and over the last few years, that's expanded to some other software products. But we, again, as I mentioned, with being a job shop and doing a large variety of different stuff and needing to be able to transition quickly, we needed an internal industrial automation solution that allowed us to do things in-house, so that if we landed a new customer, a new job that meant that something needed to work differently, we couldn't always wait on a third-party partner to implement something for us. So it's for 30 plus years we have been kind of building and evolving our plating lines. One of the challenges of that being that we don't have spare plating lines that we can test on. So a lot of our development essentially happens in a production environment, and we make changes to code this week, and then at the end of the week, before we start up the next week, we download and sometimes test, sometimes say we tested, those changes and hope everything goes well. Um, but it is something that we've gotten pretty good at knowing our business and knowing how to automate our stuff. Um, but over the last decade, especially, we're seeing a lot of other players have really started embracing automation as that's become more mainstream. So what once was a real distinction for us and a real competitive advantage, we feel still is, but the gap is shrinking. Lots of other companies are also automated, and lots of other companies are doing some of the same things. So we're constantly looking for ways to continue pushing the envelope and continue pushing boundaries and continue evolving. And over the last several years, a lot of what that has meant is dealing with ensuring that we preserve historical data so that we can go back and verify and document our processes, or we can troubleshoot our processes. It involves more communication. For a long time, we took our order database on our COBOL based system and used that to generate recipes, work instructions that would go into our PLC systems. That amount of communication is increasing, and there are just constantly new integrations that we are developing between our plant floor and management to ensure that we truly understand our costs, and we truly understand where our inefficiencies are, and we truly understand where we need to go next and what works and what's going to make things easier for our operators, and what's going to not only make it easier, but make it easier to train our operators and let them really focus on getting out a quality product that's still going to set us apart, rather than focusing on tasks that can be automated. So as we've done that over the last couple of decades, we've made a lot of progress. Over the last several years, we're really investing in updating most of our industrial automation hardware to a newer generation of products. We're still working with Opto 22. I know the point of this is not to plug them, but I will happily do so. They're a fantastic partner for us. But it's tough in the same way that programming our machines is tough. Upgrading the hardware on our machines is tough because we can't really do downtime. So as we're in the midst of a large transition for us, this is where it kind of ties in with Copia. Having Copia and having something that's allowing us to improve our development practices, to step up our game in terms of DevOps, as we're talking about here, has really been a key thing.
Yeah, I have a quick question. You had, from what I'm gathering, an early kind of competitive advantage for Varland was the early adoption of automation compared to the rest of your competitors. And now what I'm kind of gathering is that what's going to make you set apart, because everyone's caught up now, what's going to take you to the next level is adopting more DevOps principles. A question that I hear all the time, and again, I'm curious to get your perspective on it, was how did you get your team to buy in, and kind of how that whole process look like? Just if you could walk me through that process of, hey, we want to start adopting these DevOps principles. It's going to set us apart, but yeah, just take me through how you talk to your team about that, and any color commentary as well.
Yeah. So one of the things that we've seen throughout our industry, other companies they're automating more, and they're doing a good job. But one of the things that we feel still sets us apart is the fact that we design and we do our automation in-house. We have tried a couple times to, hire a company to build us a line or a machine that is it's advertised as turnkey. It's never been turnkey. And we know that because, again, job shop, lots of different variety, that's fine. But part of what, my team, we have to move sometimes faster than we would like, but sometimes we have to move quickly. And being able to tell my team that, Copia is a tool that is going to allow us, essentially, it's going to allow us all to look better, because it's going to improve the quality of the product that we're delivering to our customer, which is the other people in our company. So it can seem a little bit at first like, oh, Copia is big brother and my boss is trying to, overanalyze everything I'm doing. But that's not the goal. The goal is to make sure that, hey, we have some standards and everybody's following them, and it's not in a critical way, but in a, let's make sure that the code that I write, when you get called next week to look into that, you know what the heck is going on. So in terms of standardizing, which is making it easier for everybody to go about their job, um, that was fairly easy to get buy-in. Just in terms of troubleshooting and figuring out what's going on with the machines, it's having better DevOps practices is really. We all very quickly understood why it would be beneficial, and one of the reasons is because we went for a long time without them. Um, and the products worked great, but there was a lot of times when it was something would go wrong with one of our machines or one of our sensors, and we'd get a call from the plant floor, and the question was always, well, did we do a download this week, or when was the last time that code changed, or who was the last person that changed that code? And then they would say, well, here's what I changed, which is really, if you don't actually track it, it's what they think they changed. Um, so I have two people on my team who are involved with OT stuff right now, and they've both been at the company for several years. So before we really had any help with DevOps, so we've all kind of gone through that pain of not having good tools. So once we found a tool that was able to help, in my case, it was pretty easy to get buy-in, because it just we had all experienced that pain. And this is something that it doesn't completely take it away, but it takes a giant step toward that.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And like one color commentary from our side is was actually exactly why we started the company as well as like people want to implement better practices. For example, we do blameless postmortems, right? We should be figuring out what caused the problem, not who caused the problem. But a big part that we saw when we first started the company was these teams just don't have those tools to even begin that journey. And so a big part of our mission is, well, people want to do certain practices, but they can't because there's no tooling. So thank you for the insight. That's pretty awesome.
Mhm.
But Andrea, I know you have some more questions.
Oh, actually, we were touching on the next point, which was, sounds like the team, they're bought in, and that's great. Is there any other commentary to add just around the continued buy-in or the continued usage of Copia by the team? How's that been going? Tell us more about that.
So one of the things that's a little bit unique for us is because we're coming from an Opto 22 platform. Um, if anyone's looking at the Copia website, you're not going to find a lot of information on Opto 22 as being an officially supported PLC platform, which is because it's not. Um, so we've tried things over the years with Opto 22 to try to implement some sort of version control change tracking. Um, Opto 22 has the ability in their programming software to go in and essentially print your entire program to text. And we've tried that at times where we would commit that to a GitHub repository so that we would at least have a text-based change log. But it was a very manual process. It was a very it relied on a human being doing that at the right time. Those text files always had some header information like the date and time printed, so there was always something changing. Um, so that's been a pain point for as long as I've been here. So over the last couple of years, one of the things that Opto has done with their hardware is their newer controllers have the ability not only to run their own, it's called pack control, a pack control program, but they also have the ability, they have a built-in CodeSys runtime. So we evaluated and we made the switch for a variety of reasons. That as we move forward and upgrade our hardware, we'd also like to upgrade our software to use CodeSys rather than using the Opto pack control programs. So we did that for a number of reasons. One was, in terms of whenever we do have to find new people to come here and work, finding people who, it's much more of an industry standard. There's more options. There's a lot of reasons that I won't go into all of those here. But again, if anyone ever has any questions, I'm happy to go more in depth there. But as we've moved to CodeSys, which is more of an officially supported platform within Copia, it's becoming even more evident to my team to see what Copia can really do. Because we're using it with our Opto software, but it's essentially just saying, all right, your whole project changed. So we can go in and still do a pull request and still say, hey, I want somebody to approve this. And with Opto, their software, when you compile it, it compiles down into Forth code, which I've been here a long time. I haven't been here long enough that I know anything about Forth code. But the nice thing is with that Forth code, it is text-based and it at least gives us a hint of where in the program our code changed. So even without Opto being officially supported on Copia, we're able to use Copia to track changes in our Opto software the same way that we could on just standard GitHub. Obviously, Copia built on top of GitHub. It's not adding all that much with our Opto software, but as we do move to CodeSys, we're really able to see, the magic that Copia adds on top of that in terms of actually rendering differences in our code and being able to say, not just, okay, the code changed, but here's exactly what changed. So my team, as we've been doing that, they've been really excited to see that level of detail. And, even a lot of our higher ups in management here are very technically inclined. And for them to be able to go see, hey, when was the last time we actually merged a code change in? They're kind of getting used to that, that vocabulary, that workflow, and being able to have better management insight into what's going on without always having to come to us and say, again, they've understood for a long time. It's not what did you do? It's what do you think you did? So that's been something that's been really great with Copia.
Fantastic. Okay, well, we've talked about Copia quite a bit, so let's get into a little bit more specifics around that. So just in general, obviously we arrived at the point of Copia. There was quite a technology journey beforehand, but in terms of investing in any technical process, when you're starting your assessment, what do you look for? What do you avoid? Tell us more about your thought process there.
So the longer I've done this, what I'm really looking for is things that I see providing lasting value. Um, it's easy to get caught up in something that's new and flashy, but what I'm looking for more is I like things that are kind of, they follow a little bit of an industry standard, which is one reason, again, that's one reason why the move from pack control to CodeSys, because while pack control's out there and it's fantastic in its own right, there are things I prefer about CodeSys, and it's something that, if you look out in the industry, you know, CodeSys is a stable product. It's a great product. It's not going to be gone next year. So I have invested in some technology over the last 2 decades that, almost as soon as I invested, it was gone. So I'm looking for things that are stable. As a smaller company, I don't have my technology budget's not in the millions of dollars. So I'm not, I read things, and when I was in college, that was all out of a business college. Everything that we did was, we're going to use this Oracle database that I'm never going to be able to afford, and we're going to use all this stuff that, for a small business is just completely out of reach. So for a small business, I really need to make the most of my dollars. So I'm looking for things that can be high impact without, breaking the bank. So, um, that's something that I I always look for things that, again, high impact, stable, affordable for a smaller business, and that are going to everything just has to go through the lens of is this going to improve the quality of what I'm able to deliver to my customers, so that at the end of the day, we're all in business here. The whole point is, can this move the bottom line? Can it move the bottom line by giving us a new ability that's going to bring more in the door? can it improve the bottom line by increasing efficiency so that the stuff that comes in the door, our margins increase? So that's kind of where my mind goes when evaluating some of these tech solutions.
I had a quick question in terms of technical process as well. You had mentioned like merging and code review. Can you walk me through that? And like, were you doing code review and merging beforehand? Kind of, how did that come into play? Because that is obviously, I've seen either someone printing papers and then signing, like, printing
Right.
PDF code and signing them and putting them back and scanning them. A big event for Copia obviously was digitizing that and making it asynchronous. But
Right.
from your point of view, were you already implementing code review? If not, kind of walk us through how you are using it and seeing benefit from it.
Yeah. So again, with three of us working in IT/OT here, we weren't really using any real code review on the OT side because there just wasn't really a great way to do it. Um, Sometimes if one of the guys wasn't sure about how something was going to work, we'd get together and kind of look at it in real time. But um, because we don't just exist in the OT world, we also exist in the IT world. We've done some internal web development. We've got some Ruby on Rails apps and things like that. So for that stuff, we've been using GitHub for a long time. Um, Sometimes with things like branches and pull requests and merging, sometimes with just, we're just going to commit everything to main. Um, so we all had some familiarity with GitHub, with Git, with version tracking, with those capabilities. It's funny that you mentioned printouts and signing because when I started here, and I still sometimes actually this morning I was working on some COBOL programming because we still run an IBM iSeries. We still have a lot of in-house software that runs on COBOL. My former boss, who started a lot of that, we have four big 4-drawer file cabinets with all the printed out source code. And that was always his process: was you pull it out, you hand annotate it, you write your entry in the change log in the front, goes back in the file cabinet. Um, and as a millennial, when I came in here, I was like, this isn't going to work. I can't do this long term. So I started looking into many years ago. I wrote a little program that ran on Windows that copied all of that COBOL source code out as text files on Windows into a GitHub repository. Finally convinced him that it worked, and that was a way that not only was I, because I would forget to annotate stuff, I'd forget to write the change log, and that was like his favorite part of his day when he could call me not on my program that didn't work, but on my documentation that didn't work. Um, so kind of moving some of that to GitHub a long time ago. We were somewhat familiar with those practices from some of those other sides, but on the OT side, yeah, I kind of mentioned we had tried some like export to text for tracking, but we didn't really use many of those DevOps practices on the OT side at all.
Perfect.
Great. Well, we've segued into talking a little bit about OT. Let's discuss that a little bit further. So just in terms of advice, Toby, you've really shared a lot of good recommendations just when it comes from looking at technology and evaluating that, what even got us to this point. Just in general, as a broad question for your peers managing their OT, any advice that you would give there?
Um, one of the things that I have come to really realize, I think for me, and I'm by no means, some industry expert on all things OT. So, the people in this panel, they probably all know more than I do, which is great. But, for me, I think a big part of it is I think it's important to use products and tools and invest in things that are going to make you or your team or your developers more effective. Um, so one of the things that, as I've talked to Opto over the years, that they talked about is when they first started making their stuff, it wasn't really designed for operating in a team environment. It was okay, you've got one programmer who's doing this, so you know you're not worried about, oh, how do two people have this open at the same time, or how do two people work on this? But obviously, over the years, those things have changed, and in a lot of cases now, you have to have the right tools, and you have to have the products that allow you to maximize your time and your efficiency. Because if you're a system integrators, as some of you might be, efficiency is the name of the game, and you've got to be able to get stuff done well and done quickly and done the first time so that you can move on to your next job and you know increase your revenue that way. And even in a position like mine where I'm within one company, um, I don't really care about the latest and greatest, or hey, which thing has the fastest processor or things like that, unless it's really going to make my team more efficient. Because essentially, whatever I can do to build into my team, to build those skills, to build the people, that's, it's not always the most exciting because we're all here, we all like technology and we all use that stuff. Um, but the people truly are the most important resource that we have. And again, that's where a tool like Copia has really allowed me to build into the people on my team and to make sure that I'm helping them become better at what they do. And um, that's that's I know that's true in any, whether we're talking OT, IT, sales, whatever it is. But as we talk about all this technology stuff and automation and all of that stuff, I don't want it to get lost that nothing's more important than the people. And Copia is it's one of those tools that makes my people better, and it made them better immediately. It makes me a better manager. It gives me abilities that I just didn't have before. Um, so I think that's kind of where I come down in that area.
I love hearing the people aspect of that, Toby. Meeting with another Copia customer just a couple of months ago, the customer shared just how much they've had the free space now to have the human beings on the team actually problem solve and creatively think through action items and work through that versus having to do the tedious tasks that they were doing before. So I love the people first approach and love that you're seeing that too. So this is kind of touching on, another question just in general, Copia as a partner, what's worked well in terms of working with the team here, the product?
I mean, I think the big thing is it was pretty evident immediately that uh, it was easy to embrace Copia because it's easy to see that Copia, it's an implementation of Git, which is standard. Everybody knows it or can learn it. You're not reinventing the wheel. The magic of Copia is rendering what previously seemed like these binary files into a diffable format. Um, but as we got into that, we found that the team at Copia, one, was very flexible because if I remember right, the minimum license pack you guys sell is for 5 users, and I didn't need 5 users, but you guys worked with us on that. Your documentation has been great, and it's focused on, for people who are coming from an OT background who may not have used Git as much. It's a really kind of focused set of, here's how you use the product, here's what we can bring to it. The onboarding sessions and training were fantastic, and they were not just this cookie cutter, hey, we're going to send you through a webinar to learn. It was a Zoom call with a live person who was actually listening to us. And in the case here where the three of us on the call had some background with Git and kind of knew a little bit about Git and what we were doing, he was able to say, all right, look, I'm not going to make you guys all sit here through a half-hour meeting with what you really know. So it's more of a, how can I help you? What do you want to get out of this, and how can I help you get there? I've found the team at Copia to be very open to suggestions and super responsive. And it's been great for me to see, because I know that it doesn't feel like we're a small fish in a big pond when we've been dealing with you guys. And even though I know that, and hopefully this matters to some of the panelists, there are extra features in Copia that I'm not really taking advantage of because I'm not on a Rockwell or Siemens platform. It's really exciting to see the new things that Copia is doing and the ways that you're continuing to push. And as I've told a number of people there, when all of those new things come to CodeSys, I'll be even happier. But it really, I can't say enough good things about my experience with onboarding. And I mean, the product, it works as advertised. And, when I showed my company president, hey, look, I want you to kind of look at this thing. And he said, well, how do we know it's actually going to work? And I was able to explain to him that, well, it's Git. It's proven it works. Don't worry about that. It was a very easy business decision when he said, okay, they're working with us they're not going to make us pay for users we don't need. And then he said, if it's going to work, which I assured him it would, it's a very easy decision. And again, it's been nothing but positive for us.
No, thank you for that insight. I mean, I think what you're saying mirrors a lot of what went to the early thought of the company as well. Because like you said, in the beginning, when we even explain to investors or even my friend, I'll just be like, look, it's just Git for specific applications. And they're like, oh, that's it. But I'm like, it's also for applications that like run society. And they're like, oh, they didn't
Right.
have it already. So like there was that gap of like it's kind of a no-brainer. Obviously the hard part of that technical moat. And the other thing is that the fact that it is Git is a huge advantage for us because like we do write documentation specifically for the controls and automation space. We actually do a lot of little small product touch-ups in the product itself that are obviously like if we see an HMI, we're like, hey, this is an HMI, but we don't render it yet. But if you have, if you want to, reach out to us to like prioritize this feature or rendering it, please let us know. So the small little parts where we actually put guardrails around it. But the other big benefit
Right.
of Git is that you can just Google how to use Git and you'll
Right.
find 50,000 YouTube videos on how to do a commit and like hundreds of pages of Google. So that for us has been very key in terms of that like people grasping that is like, look, it's a universal technology, right? Even if, God forbid tomorrow Kobe just disappears, they go, what happens to my files? I'm like, it's still all yours. You can just move it to another Git
Right.
provider. It's not going to go anywhere.
Which
So.
and that's great. I exist most of my day, not very standard in this world. I exist most of my day on a Mac platform. Um, remote desktop into a PC when I absolutely have to suffer through using Windows, but Copia doesn't have a Mac app. It's okay. I can open my terminal, run git clone a Copia repository to my computer, work on a changelog or a markdown file within my repository, commit it using all the built-in Git tool. I mean, that's what I love about it is it's standard. And the other benefit of that is that with you guys building on top of Git, you get to focus just on what sets Copia apart, which is rendering diffs in these, like you said, these products that they run society. They provide safety, they keep people alive. I mean, this stuff is so critically important. So a tool that's helping build quality in that is great, but you guys don't have to focus on, as I understand it, I'm no expert, but you guys don't have to focus on, okay, how do we actually, all the stuff that Git does behind the scenes. You guys can focus just on that core thing that allows Copia to provide this service. And that's something that, again, as soon as I heard about it, it was very easy, like watch a video and it was like, man, this is what I've been looking for the last decade. And, I can tell you, one of the first things I did is I sent the link to a couple of my contacts at Opto, and I said, "Hey, are you guys like working with these people to get on their platform because you need to?" So it's yeah, when you really look at it, to me, it was an easy decision. The price it's a steal for what it does, and again, from a user's perspective, everybody I've worked with there has just been fantastic to work with. So.
It's awesome. Thank you so much.
Matt, from your perspective, any other, like customer anecdotes that, sound similar to what Toby is sharing here? Thank you for sharing that, Toby, especially working with the team. Just from our perspective too, in terms of like the human element, another cool customer use case that we heard was Copia, yes, gets them out of the minutia and the day-to-day, but it also allows for them to innovate because it's safe for them to have a centralized environment. And so, they're making things go back, as an example, on the floor, and they're able to roll it out to other sites more scalably as a result. So love to hear that. Love again, the people first approach and working with the Copia team specifically. Matt, what else? Do you have other customer anecdotes that you'd like to share?
Well, I mean, I do want to also applaud Varland as an organization because I think a very overlooked part of this DevOps putting people first is I think kudos to you and your team of like really focusing, realizing that DevOps principles are for how you maintain talent, attract talent, and like keep people happy, right? I think when he first, even an early Copia anecdote was when he first started the company, we had controls engineers applying to our company because they're like, hey, I quit controls because I came out of college, starry-eyed, and they just locked me in a room and I was just scanning old papers and just doing all these like, very tedious, boring tasks, and it churned them out of controls as a whole. I'm not a controls engineer, but when I see plans for anything, I'm like, I feel like a kid again. Like, I'm like, wow, this is like definitely like connects in real life, right? It's like you're building awesome and cool things that move around. And so I think kudos to you and your team for, investing in that for your talent and making use of like investing in tooling to kind of make the work life better. And, definitely I do see DevOps and doing like this to longer term attract talent and as your team grows to scale that team because on the IT side, you can't scale without DevOps, right? So as your organization
Right.
continues to grow, it needs to be critical for that. But yeah, I mean, and another, I don't know about anecdotes, but I think also the fact that you're implementing this is setting you apart from competitors. We've seen other organizations, integrators who were trying to do source control manually and then a code review manually. And then a big thing was for them was just the sheer amount of hours saved. And so we
Yeah.
worked with a system integrator who was doing everything by hand. And then the moment they had Copia, they're like, I'm saving hours upon hours a week of not having to get on random Zoom calls, do this, work asynchronously, and again, like make use of everyone's time a bit more efficiently. So definitely what you're doing, what you're saying is already from what I've seen in the history of Copia customers is already pushing you towards like kind of the more advanced, kind of forward-looking and innovative side.
Which I appreciate those kind words. I feel like it's, again, I don't know about the participants here. Copia has been fantastic for me as a manager within one company. I can say if any of you are system integrators or you work for a company where you're moving to different projects all the time, um, the benefits would just be way more even. Because I've got a few systems that I keep coming back to time after time, but they're always kind of front of my mind. But if you're in a system where, hey, you deliver a machine to a customer and then 6 months later they call you and want to add something to it, having that code in Copia where you can kind of go back and you can see actual notes and you can see a commit history, um, especially if any of you are delivering machines or code where customers may have access to that code, like I do for my machine that was supposed to be turnkey. um, if that company were using something like Copia and we called them with a problem, it would be a piece of cake for them to say, all right, we have our saved version of code, let me see what he's messed up in our code. They could upload the code from the PLC and see exactly not what I told them I changed, but they could see exactly what I've changed. So, um, yeah, there's just so many use cases, and again, I feel like it's just a manager within one company. I'm kind of at the lowest level of what I can really get from it, and even then, it's all of the things that I said I stand behind.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that. And, in the spirit, I know we've talked a little bit about a forward-looking kind of mindset, just, generally, are there any industry trends? And this is a question that came to us, but are there any industry trends inside of technology or just the industry in general that you're capitalizing on, that you're seeing and are nervous about? Like any comment on trends, whether it relates to technology or Varland, anything to share there?
I mean, I think in the kind of in the industrial automation arena where I exist, one of the big trends is it's just do everything with all the data. Um, you know, we have so many sensors and so many machines, and there are so many great tools now for tracking that data historically and making sure that that data is, integrated from the guy on the plant floor running the machine all the way up to the president of the company who can see that data that he needs. So the amount of data, the amount of products that are built to share data and integrate with other systems, is a huge trend. Just democratizing all of that information that comes out of this industrial automation, is a huge trend. It's again, it's one reason why I have loved working with Opto 22 products, because Opto 22, one of their values is to be a good digital citizen and to understand that, hey, they're not trying to lock you in. We want to play well in the whole ecosystem. And again, it's where a product like Copia becomes so important, because while, running a line is important and having the PLC do what it needs to do is really important, when you're writing code and when you're doing projects that is feeding that data up to the CEO of your company or your customer's company, there's another level of needing to make sure that quality is there, needing to make sure that things are done the right way. So that's really the big trend. Is I just feel like there's the amount of data producing devices is just exploding. So being able to integrate all of those things and being able to, save and present and contextualize all that data is, the biggest trend I've seen over the last couple of years.
It's great.
Yeah. I just wanted to add color on that as well. And as you're talking about like these like very complex systems, I mean the longer term vision of Copia, right? It's not just like source control or a backup solution. It is truly like a DevOps platform. So obviously, kind of we break it into four pillars, right? There's like source control, we think about testing, we think about deployment, and we think about observability of the code, right? So obviously there are things behind the scenes we're working on in terms of the other two pillars that we haven't really dove into. But another really big aspect of Copia, is like you said, is really where we were trying to operate and position ourselves as that kind of glue layer, right? So it's like, how do you start connecting even different tool chains from Siemens into one platform, or from any of these vendors, that might trigger like, hey, I want to do code and I want to go test this, I want to go do this, I want to do all of these. Then how do you unify that on one platform? And a really cool thing you're talking about in terms of the data side is then how do we start integrating with other cool tech companies, like I think like a Highbite or something, where it's like, hey, we can actually ingest data from them, and then we can start tying it directly to code changes that you've made, and we can like do all these proactive alerts. So obviously this is a bit about the future and where we can go, but I think a really exciting part of um, partnering with Copia is getting feedback from partners like you, understanding where you see, trends and needs in terms of like what you have, and how we can also push your team as well to adopt, kind of like cutting edge technologies and practices. But like that's like kind of the daunting thing as well, is like the fact that we try to position ourselves as a glue code. There's so many different areas that we can go into. And so, having partners like Varland, where it's like we want to keep our ears close and say, hey, what do you need now? And then where can we push you realistically in the next, 2 years or something like that. But just some color commentary on there, especially when you talk about the data side. I'm particularly interested in how we start, in the future, ingesting that, tie that to code changes. There's a lot of cool things that we could do.
Right.
Yeah, love it. Well, it looks like we have time for just one more question just before we, wrap up. So through, we talk about a lot of, IT related items, OT, IT OT convergence. That's absolutely a headline that we see quite a bit these days. Toby, in terms of managing IT and OT together, any benefits, challenges, what are you seeing with that convergence, as it were, between IT and OT?
It's the convergence is the right word. It's very nice for me. I'm becoming a more effective manager and I'm providing better customer service because, um, I'm able to get better at one set of tools that I can use in both arenas rather than having completely separate processes. And this is something that, we've talked about on this call, how, there's been so much development for decades in terms of tools and workflows and stuff on the IT side, that finally being able to use some of those tools and those methodologies and those workflows on the OT side makes it more possible for me to kind of manage both. Because I mean, really, for years, while I may have been in charge of both things, I knew that I was not as effective as I wanted to be at some of that stuff because there's so much, there's so much to do. So again, in the same way that when I'm evaluating a technology solution, what I want things that's going to make things better for people, whether that's for my developers or my factory floor workers or anybody else. I want technology that's going to be better going to make somebody's job easier. It's going to make them more effective. At the same time, I love tooling and products that's going to make me more effective, and it's going to, simplify management, and it's going to, allow me to actually achieve all the priorities that I've set out and that my bosses have set out for me. So I know there are some other kind of things going on in that space where people are kind of trying to bring some of the IT legacy that's maybe a little bit maybe miles ahead of where OT is right now, but trying to bring some of those same methodologies and ideas into the OT world. I think it's just really, really exciting. OT it's just so important, and it's not going anywhere. So it just is really it's really cool to see real movement toward making that space better. So yeah, I think that's where I'm at with that. It's been really this whole year for me of expanding into some different OT things, especially with Copia, has been really exciting.
Fantastic. Love to hear it. Love to hear just the future facing mindset. Love how we're staying on the trends and how we're thinking about it. Love that Copia is part of the journey. So with that, I mean, that brings us pretty close to time. So, I mean, first and foremost, thank you to everyone who attended today. Thank you for the outstanding questions. What I will say is, if you heard something today that you have more questions about, if you want to talk to the team further, we're here anytime to do that. Just a bit of contact information from us. If you do want to speak further about your business, please, let's talk. You can visit www.copia.io. There you'll find a wealth of information. So that includes our resource library, which is full of webinars and blogs, latest and greatest content from us just about industrial DevOps, what's happening here at Copia. We'd love to chat. Also, if you want to just contact us further, please book a time with us anytime. And we'd love to learn more about your business and how we can help. That said, sincere thank you, first and foremost, to Toby. Thank you very much for sharing insights about your business, insights about the industry, your journey with Varland and with Copia and everything in between. Thank you very much for the expertise today.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. I don't always consider myself an expert. It's nice to have some kind words said about me, but more than anything, it was just like investing in Copia as a tool was an easy choice. It's an easy choice for me to give a little bit of the time back that you guys have already saved me to help other people understand that it's a tool that is more than a tool. It's a service. It's a partner that is really super valuable, and it can really help other people get to the next level as well. Just as long as they don't work in the plating industry, we're all good.
Love it. Oh, well, thank you very much for today. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Toby, Matt, everybody, please connect with any of us on LinkedIn. Again, we're here to chat anytime. Thanks so much. Have a good rest of your day, everybody.
Yes, thank you all.